While President Donald Trump is publicly downplaying the coronavirus in order to help his reelection, in private, Trump's allies are using this crisis to make an extra buck. Now, according to the group Public Citizen, who just released a new report on Monday exposing over 40 Trump connected lobbyists who have raked in over $10 billion in federal COVID 19 relief. So understand, that is your tax money. That's your tax dollars going to these corporations, going to these lobbyists, right? And these lobbyists, of course, have made it so that these billions have made it into the pockets of their corporate clients. The dozens of lobbyists with ties to Trump through his campaigns, his administration, and or his transition team, according to the report, collectively have represented at least 150 clients on COVID matters. Public Citizen notes in its new report called the COVID Lobbying Palooza. Yep, accurate. It is a lobbying palooza because it's America. Now, those clients include Pfizer, Comcast, McDonald's, MasterCard, and American Airlines. So let me give you a quote from this report. The crisis offered an especially lucrative opportunity for those lobbyists who enjoy close ties to President Donald Trump and his administration, and of course, they seized it. They have reported lobbying to obtain special industry carve-outs for aid, government approval of their clients' products, and most commonly, COVID-related aid across a myriad of programs. In total, Public Citizen found that 27 clients of Trump-connected lobbyists have secured about $10.5 billion in taxpayer coronavirus aid, a sum that is likely an underestimate because of it does not include data from the $650 billion Paycheck Protection Program, in which, of course, the data is not public. It's being hidden by the Trump administration. They are not telling us who is getting that aid. They're like, no. Transparency, we don't care about transparency. No, we're not interested at all in being transparent. We're not going to tell you who gets this aid. And you know what? We passed it that way. Both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, they explicitly put that in, that they didn't have to be transparent for the first 6 months. And so there's that. Isn't it nice to know that the government is literally hiding where our money is going? Yeah. I mean, it could go to Trump-related businesses, not to Trump himself, because, well, I guess we don't really know that for sure, because when has Donald Trump ever followed the rules, even his rules? And so there's a very good chance that it probably could have ended up in Donald Trump's pockets or members of his family. And so that's where your money's going. Yeah, it's while we get a $1,200 check, by the way, we get a $1,200 check and some unemployment benefits, right? Some people get them, not everybody, obviously. So here's the thing. There's more. The $10.5 billion total, according to Public Citizen, consists of $6.3 billion in grants, $4.2 billion in loans, and $67 million worth of support in the form of corporate bond purchases by the Federal Reserve. So most of that, $6.3 billion, that's grant money. They don't have to give that back. They don't have to pay that back. So that's just free money given to corporations. And the $4.2 billion in loans. The way this is set up, by the way, the Paycheck Protection Program is set up is if, you don't fire employees, right, that you can convert that loan into a grant and not have to pay that back. And so, look, a lot of these companies are taking advantage, taking your tax money, and they didn't necessarily need it. So now, in reading this story, something occurred to me, right? And I admit it's kind of speculative on my part, and I'll be honest about that. But what if Donald Trump isn't quite as dumb about COVID-19 as I tend to think? Remember, like a lot of the stuff that I've said is, okay, always count on stupidity. He's a dumb person. He's a dangerous person. And look, generally, yeah, I'm usually right about him being stupid. He's not an intelligent man. He's not a smart person. But He's good at getting money, right? He's good at scamming and cheating the system, kind of. And so, and I say that because, like, well, this is somebody who's went bankrupt 6 times and yet still somehow has money. All right. Anyway, so my thought process on this, and hear me out, right? So, what if he's not as ignorant about COVID-19 as we think and actually knows exactly how dangerous this is? Again, this is somebody who's a germaphobe, right? And instead of advocating for policy and things that would stop coronavirus, like wearing masks and social distancing, he is instead doing opposite. So now there are numerous reasons, of course, being floated by people like, why would Donald Trump do that? Well, for one, look, you could say the counter argument to that is, yeah, but it's hurting his reelection chances. Well, okay, right. Well, but the other counter argument to that is, well, okay, but he's keeping his base happy by, saying that, oh, it's a hoax. It's the Democrats that are trying to destroy me. So you need to get out there. You need to vote as soon as possible. It's also setting up a way, by the way, for him to blame like corruption and to blame vote rigging and all that stuff, just in case he loses, right? And so there's always that. There's an out, okay? But also, he might be doing this because of the money. It's not just stupidity, right? Yes, I say bank on stupidity, but also bank on greed, because that's really who Donald Trump is. He's a greedy, stupid man. And so he doesn't care about the damage coronavirus is doing to the American people, even to the American economy, as long as, it doesn't affect his, obviously, his reelection chances. I mean, here's what I think his thought process on this is. A lot of it's happening in cities, right? Where there's a lot of, urban Democrats, essentially, right? Democratic voters tend to be more located in the cities, right? And so what if Donald Trump says, well, who cares? Those people aren't my voters. Those are the blacks. Those are the Democrats, the urban voters. I'm not going to win those guys anyway, so I don't give a damn about fighting coronavirus. And look, if Fox News tells me that I'm doing great in coronavirus or great with my voters, then that's great. If they tell me that I'm not doing great, then that's fake news. And I'm done with them, except for people like Tucker Carlson, who I love. I mean, yeah, sure, it's speculation, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if that is his attitude on this. And add in the fact that Trump-connected lobbyists are making bank, and therefore, in his mind, they owe him one. I mean, is that really all too far-fetched, right? That he looks at these companies that are making money off programs that he signed, and he thinks, well, those guys owe me. They owe me what, money, or they owe me something, right? Maybe they're going to donate to my reelection campaign, or even afterwards, hey, I got clout now. If once I'm out of office, I'm going back to running my business. Now I got a bunch of other businessmen that owe me a favor because I helped them out and gave them COVID relief. Well, then, that's going to benefit me later on, and I'm going to cash in those favors. Again, one thing you have to understand about Donald Trump is that he is transactional, right? So if he does something, he immediately believes that that's going to lead to him getting something for it down the road. He does not do anything altruistically. So there's that, right? Now, getting back to the administration itself, didn't they ban lobbying? Well, yes, actually they did. But surprise, surprise, these lobbyists are not following the administration's rules. Public Citizen identified at least 5 of the lobbyists, including former Transportation Department official Jeffrey Burr and former Treasury Advisor Jordan Stoic, had violated or may have violated a Trump executive order that restricts lobbying activities by former officials. The report reads that in many cases, the forms indicate that former officials' agencies were directly lobbied, which is against, of course, the Trump executive order. Hey, look, the Trump administration saying one thing and doing the complete opposite. How surprising that there's literally no enforcement of that executive order whatsoever. Almost like it was put there for show, but completely and utterly toothless. Shocker. Craig Holman, a registered lobbyist for Public Citizen and a campaign finance expert, told the Associated Press that the group is planning to file ethics complaints with the White House over these alleged apparent violations. Holman says this: there does not appear to be anyone who is enforcing the executive order, and says the investigation into the activity is warranted, although it's probably not going to happen. Let's be honest about this. The administration, or if it does happen, the administration's going to say, well, we looked into ourselves and we found out that we didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. That's probably going to be the way that it goes. See, look at that. We're 100% transparent about an investigation that we pretended to do about ourselves and then let ourselves go. Drain the swamp. All right, anyway. And now Public Citizen, the group itself, put out a statement to the AP that said few scenarios would better embody most people's image of the Washington swamp than dozens of hired gun lobbyists cashing in on their government connections during a public health emergency. But understand now, right, that it's not just Washington. This is America. America is pretty much known for its institutional corruption. Remember, before the executive order from the Trump administration, this kind of activity was widespread. It was normal, and it's still normal. And it's happening again during a pandemic, during COVID-19. And so, look, instead of, taking care of its citizens, our government took care of the corporations. They gave the American people scraps, as I mentioned before, one $1,200 check, plus some unemployment benefits that are about to run out that many people haven't still received, by the way. It's set to expire July 31st, the end of this month, and we still have a pandemic. In fact, it's worse than it has before. Look, there are experts out there that are saying that any progress that we had made locking down the country, remember, in the beginning of this COVID crisis, right? Once some people actually started to take it seriously and decided to lock down a lot of the country, right? Any progress that we made is gone, has been completely erased because people have been irresponsible. And states have been irresponsible. And so here we have COVID spikes all over the country. We've hit 2.8 million total infections that we know of, over 130,000 dead. I mean, look, we're around 50,000 new cases a day here in this country. And so I don't see it getting better. It's going to get worse. And yet, what is the government doing? Nothing. No more COVID relief for regular people. No more unemployment benefits. Get everybody back to work. And that's their plan. That's exactly what they're going to do. And so, and this is, by the way, while companies are cashing in. They're still cashing in. Both of those programs to help regular people are a tiny little fraction of what we've given to the corporations. It's the corruption, and we need to fix that corruption. Now, Public Citizen suggests first and foremost that we should be transparent about it. In the short term, the government, of course, should do everything it possibly can to offer the public an unobstructed window into the details of where the trillions in public dollars are going. Of course, they're not going to do that. We know they're not going to do that. And I doubt that they would even do that during a Democratic administration. Because, look, Obama Biden, right? We just got done with that. And they were saying that they were the most transparent administration in history, when in reality, they were not. And so you expect a Biden administration to be transparent? No, they're going to be about as transparent as a Trump administration, which means not at all. And now he also said, in the long term, future administrations in Congress should embrace systemic reforms to sever the conflicts of interest that incentivize government officials to favor the wealthy and well-connected over the constituents whom they are hired to serve. Well, The problem with that, of course, is how can you get a Congress to change when Congress is the one benefiting from the corruption in the first place? Again, Congress has got this revolving door where people in the administration and in Congress, they will go after their terms and they will get lobbyist jobs and they'll come back and lobby their friends, basically. And they'll get paid massive amounts of money to do it. I mean, Joe Crowley, for example, the guy who was beaten by AOC last time, right? Well, Joe Crowley became a lobbyist after he lost his position. Dave Brott became a lobbyist. I'm sorry, not Dave Brott. Eric Cantor, who was beaten by Dave Brott, became a lobbyist. A lot of these people, once they get kicked out of Congress, become lobbyists. And so, no, depending on Congress, is not going to do the job because they benefit from the corruption and they will continue that corruption because they're allowed to. Look, electoral politics is not going to save us from this problem. This problem. You got to take it to the streets. I mean, look how effective Black Lives Matter protests were. Imagine the millions of Americans demanding an end to the corruption and taking to the streets to do it. Electoral politics alone, and I say alone because that is a component, it is a factor, because you do have to elect uncorrupted politicians, and there are certainly ones that do exist, and you need them to get these policies passed, but they're not going to do it unless, and they're not going to win, unless there's public outrage, and people that carry them into power, and you need to have these politicians as well that fear for their jobs. And so it's got to be both an outside and an inside movement. You've got to have people on the ground, on the streets, and you've got to have people in Congress as well that are beholden to those people. That's the only way we're really going to get any sort of change. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.